Well, hello everyone. Anime25 here, and talk about right here. Talk about for coloring books is like knowing about for the talk talk book, and basically that this activity right here talks about right here of like a type of a coloring book that I'm sure most of us have seen from in the stores, but this idea right here talks about for like online, especially that any kids who are to be connecting to the world networking, and you're like warrant to where the things about is to where they're going to have it allowed to where kids can actually do colorings and stuff like that online. You'll connect with other, coloring, to connect with other kids who may be coloring the same thing. And this right here will be an example right here of like, like a little chat line right here to where have right here for the person talking hello and then Matthew talking hi. So anybody that may want to wear yeah, if you're going to be coloring maybe a few pictures right here of like say for Pixar films from Finding Dory, and you have right here for Dory, and I know I did a coloring for like Marlin and as well as like for Nemo. Like yeah, I think I haven't done one for Nemo, but for like a few other the other characters especially, and anybody that may warrant toward it, yeah. Now you're gonna be doing like well. I'm like I know with me though that it's like I kind of ran out of room right here, but on your hand that talk about like a type of coloring book to where that whenever kids between the ages of maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 5 years old would be able to get on like a little electronic coloring book to where they can actually talk to people, talk to other kids especially. And we may have all heard that before as to where don't talk to strangers, right? But then on your hand, think about as to where yeah, for like what we call, for like chatting, whenever you talk to people and knowing about if it's going to be like, which says some that may say that, yeah, like if it's going to be like, say, a computer auditor, that's going to be on the program or so that they'll be writing to you, such as to where if you got a question about something or something like that, like live chat. And I know, like with live chat, that they may say that that you just rarely hear the voices of these people whenever you're talking about questions about something, and sometimes that you would make a sound such as delete, 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 and then whenever they're talking, writing a few messages, it is kind of like instant messaging as well as from message. For sent for you sent SMS, it's like you type your text messaging in it. But on the other hand, any type of messaging that more likely that we may be familiar with, would it be available on the coloring books? And some that may say that what's the reason why? And the way I think about it, though, is like really, if you're going to be spending about maybe 15-20 minutes maybe coloring a picture and thinking that you want to talk to one of your friends, they may say that yeah, that they're they can maybe get connected maybe from a home laptop or computer or so, and they're able to enjoy this online coloring book, and then they want to talk to you about something that they recommend you would use a certain color with the picture right here, or maybe with another picture that if it looks better with maybe a little bit yellow, or maybe the red, or like maybe the blue or type purple type make right here. But on your hand, you have right here, this right here will be an example right here of a bubble. So I know that I have not seen the movie Finding Dory, but on your hand, that I know that was like what's called by like warrant to where that a lot of things I would have to need to catch up on even after I graduate, and knowing about the movies that I may have seen that came out from the past 2 years or so. But on the other hand, that you have right here, this right here would be what I would look like whenever I got really interested in the coloring book, especially like the magic coloring books, the ones that where the colors would just magically appear whenever you would tap on it. But you see right here is this right here talks about like the type of a language like communication, and I don't know, I'm like, you may have heard that before, to where especially if you're going to be going trick-or-treating or being somewhere and you're going to be around a bunch of kids, maybe at the play place. It's like if you're going to be maybe like at the park or somewhere like that, and you may meet a little girl or a little boy who are about maybe the same age as you are maybe about maybe 2 years older, maybe between 5 and 7 years old, and then thinking about is that they start talking to you about something, and sometimes, so that if I can remember right, from like the first movies, like for Finding Nemo, is that for how Marlin and Dory, how they met especially. And I don't know, Mike. I don't really know if people really meet by running into each other, such as to where that they bump, they get they bump each other, each one in the head, like that they just run into each other, and it's like, oh, sorry, well, you're all right or something like that. So I know the way people meet nowadays, it seems like to where that you're like Warren, to where that anything that more likely that you may meet just by that you were working somewhere and you're like, what do you want? Like, oh, I'm just in here to check something, or so you're like Warren, to where interesting stories about maybe how people meet each other, especially about how kids meet each other, is to where that you could be maybe working on a coloring book, and then the next thing you know it, it's like somebody's like, what's this right here? I'm like, well, that's just, oh, well, it is interesting, but can you tell me a little bit more about it? So whenever kids meet other kids, and we're not really just talking about like preschool, but we are also talking about for any other type of activity, especially it's like if it's going to be for a person talking as well as for hello, that this person talking could be is to where that they look at some of the other work, or so knowing about if there's anybody online, especially, and thinking about that they get introduced a little bit to the tools, especially. So have right here that they get introduced to maybe a few of the other tools, like maybe like Photoshop, or any other tools like for how to change the color effects and stuff like that on this, like, let's say, this activity of a coloring book. So whenever people look at a coloring book today, necessarily think about it to where that they just have all these different colors to where they can kind of experiment around with. And some that may say that if you have over 50 different choices, if they're going to want to sit there for about maybe 10 minutes and just kind of do like scribble or anything like that, or if they're going to say that they're going to go ahead and just handle about maybe 3 or 4 different colors at a time or so. So that's just the thing, that different colors are more likely that show different works of art or so. But this right here, that I was using a little bit marker too, but like for like a coloring book, that I know, like with anybody, that if you're going to be connected to another kid, somebody, a group of maybe about 5 kids, just like on Skype call, to where you're going to be connected with about maybe 5 different kids inside, like if this is like a little hobby room, and you're able to talk to them, and then you can you can share some ideas, such as to where that I wonder about how do you color this, or I wonder how do you get around those lines right there, or like you have right, I think yellow will look good about right here, or maybe a little bit of pink right here. So I know that I don't know if they have it available on the color, which I know like coloring books online, that they're like anybody that may think about, is to where that they have almost everything else, other than like for this coloring books online. But the type of coloring book to where that maybe even the grandkids, if that's something that maybe they can like that to use, especially to where that they can actually talk to other kids who maybe some of these kids that may be from other countries too, and you're like Warren, to where that some of them that may just be trying to learn the language, the English language, and then some of them that speak Spanish pretty well, or maybe French, and you're like Warren, tour that you're talking to maybe some kids maybe out there in Tokyo or Japan or maybe Australia or somewhere, and Warren, tour like that knowing about as far as for anything that they want to say or anything that they're trying to understand too. So that's just another thing too, with with art though, with any type of coloring books, that kids from all over the world that more likely that would be wanting to learn some of this stuff, and want to kind of understand a little bit about it's like how it works, and whenever they get connected online. And we weren't, we're like preschool out there in maybe like England, or maybe parts of Paris or Israel, or maybe China, that you're like wondering if they do about maybe the same things. So thinking about necessarily to where you have right here, have a number of, let's say, different color supplies, and you're like wondering to you go and get on there and color and think about, oh hey, like an how do you do, or something like that. but but you see right here, is this right here would be a picture right here where I'll be taken right around the summertime. And if anybody wonders as to where, yeah, that you where to be, what you call, yeah, if you haven't seen the movie yet, and then you may not do very well on the test. And I know, like with anybody, that they may warrant to where that if you're going to be talking to anybody, on like this online coloring book chat, think about it like with anybody that for how we handle to where talking with strangers, especially to where that really that two people really need to introduce themselves first before that they get into the conversation about is to where that about really, oh, hey, how you doing? Well, and then they start asking other questions such as, are you a graduate, or what school you going to? You know, by what side of the country are you located on the north side or east side? So sometimes whenever you're talking to people, even on email, and I know like with email though that you could be talking to people who are all, they're kind of all spread out all over the country, even parts of Canada, and so that's why that with this like this electronic with this like online coloring book is to where that you're going to have it to where kids can actually talk to other kids who may be connected to like kind of like an Xbox Live here, but we're also talking about that for basically that you're working with like these crayons, these electronic crayons where you can add different effects and as well as do other sources of artwork especially. And like with anybody that they may want to where, yeah, how safe is that? Is to where that they really want their kids to spend time with that, is to where that's gonna help them to where they can understand just something fun to do. You're like wanting to where like a coloring book and thinking about as to where how people get to know other people's work especially. And I know a lot of coloring books out there that could be based on like maybe a Pixar film or maybe any other Disney or so character, or if it's going to be anything else. And you're like Warren toward it that yeah that has anybody really seen any coloring book based on like, and I know that I've seen quite a few of them in Variety, but you may have seen them in like say for like awesome machines or the best trucks you say of the U.S. or something like that. If anybody has ever seen any coloring books that were based on what you call maybe training, for any type of training job sites or anything like that, for anything related to technology, like, headsets for kids or something like that. So anybody that may warrant or that some things that you would see on one of those cartoons, and I know that a lot of things that anybody that may warrant or besides the Mighty Ducks, there could be what you call, one of those that, like the Jetsons or, so anybody like say, yeah, that, have like a little headset right here where kids can actually talk to. You may have seen it on the video games, but have we seen it on the coloring books? And some may say, no, actually, I haven't. But on your hand, that a few questions that maybe I may have as to where how do you talk and think about as to where really that maybe not everybody wants to color, but on your hand that you're like Warren to where that with these coloring books is to where that you start coloring and then you may be connected with maybe somebody who's under the age of 10 years old who may want to get on there and start coloring and thinking that they're going to go ahead and maybe do like a little coloring, maybe do like a little doodle drawing right here and thinking that they're going to go ahead and say like, draw like a certain character and saying that, yeah, that, that like the coloring book that says, hey, I'm Dory, hey, I'm Marlin, or, hey, I'm a certain, yeah, you're that one who has the most memory. It's like if anything, if I just basically go by it's like the previews from the movie, but anyway, anything that more like that we may remember especially. So think about this, Tori, that I know like with anybody that maybe later on in the fall I'm gonna see if I can try to watch the movie later on as well as a few other films I may have missed from since 2016 from the year 2016. But if anybody warns us to where that they watch this and thinking about this to where yeah, other than the Magic Coloring Book, but then also talk about it's like for the Talk Coloring Book, based on like for Finding Dory. And I know anybody that may think about is toward it that whenever I was about this age right here, this picture right here of me, and thinking about is to where, if you would be talking to other kids, maybe not, there could be like maybe like a little chat line and like a kind of like a classroom to where this kid that you could be talking to, could be located maybe far south or so, maybe down in Florida. Like you could maybe be in parts of Missouri or maybe parts of Iowa or somewhere like that, and they say that they're down in Florida, and then they want to show you some examples of some of their colorings as well. That the pages go from like 1 to 4 or so, and you're like, oh yeah, page 1 and 2, yeah, I went and colored these, and then it says on here, hey, I'm Dory, or you would maybe think about it as like you to where try to guess the puzzle, like any puzzle solving, such as what do you think that Marlin is thinking about, what do you think Nemo is thinking about, and where do you think that Dory is going to be going? She's like what you call in the picture right here. So all of those other characters, from the film especially, and then a few other, coloring books especially. But on your hand, to talk about, chatting, though, as to where if it's really that anybody say that, yeah, that they have it a lot of times on the internet's online sites, as to where you can actually chat with a live agent. It's like that basically means as to where that you can actually write to them in messaging, and then they would be able to respond right away. So if anybody wonders to where, yeah, live painting, it basically means as to where, what does live basically mean? That basically means is to a lot of what you're doing is basically visible. It's visible, and it's being recorded, or other people that could be watching. So it's like anybody that may want to where live basically means is to where there could be somebody else that could be listening, watching. Maybe your motions could be recorded or something like that. So live, I guess, could maybe mean a number of things, but on your hand, that if anybody warms us to where that with me right here, like for anything that I'm doing right here, and a couple of times I kept thinking about as to where that really that the times for whenever something that was going on right around here, it's like especially near my work desk, and anybody like warned to where, were you listening to me? Like, yeah, we were listening to you. We were wondering about, if you were, coloring something or getting frustrated about something, whichever it was, you were trying to figure out a tool or something. But anyway, but there you have it. Talk about, say, for the coloring book, talk, say, for Finding Dory, and then on your hand, too, it's like the activity book, online. Thanks for watching. Have a great